Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Being that we're talking about Dr. T and the Women today, I'm curious, being that Altman has, I think, legitimately 40 or 50 movies up there at least. What was everybody's introduction, and what's everybody's opinion, favorite movie from him, etc.? Charlie?
Yeah, I didn't get into Altman until I was in college. I took a writing a feature film class, and one of our first assignments was, in class, we were supposed to take notes on The Player, which was a very good assignment because that film is all about, screenwriting structure. Liked that one a lot. And then I blindly bought the Criterion DVD for Shortcuts, which to this day is one of my favorite movies. And also, as someone who religiously watched Magnolia over and over again in high school, was like, oh! And, remembering at the end of Magnolia, dedicated to Robert Altman. Oh, of course! And then in college, I just had a huge Altman phase where I went through, especially his 70s work. I got into, I watched Nashville, Three Women, Brewster McCloud, MASH, Images. I think my favorite film of his, and the one that I've returned to the most, is McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which I've written about. I've seen on 35 millimeter at the Brattle, which is a great nonprofit theater in Boston. I adore that film and how it is both a perfect Western and anti-Western, and just the ways it examines gender roles within that time, and just the loneliness of that film just aches so deeply within me every time I watch it. I think I love Altman's aesthetic. I love his that one, and not necessarily that one's focused on two main characters, but also, like many of his other films, is also an ensemble piece. So I, love the how he manages to take often eclectic arrays of incredible actors and makes films that feel so alive and so vibrant. So I am certainly a fan, which is probably why I like this film more than most people, at least based on what I've
Cut his mic. Get him out of here. No,
but yeah, I'll just stop there.
Okay. Let's see. The first movie I watched, I believe, was The Player. I've seen 6 of his movies. I would say I think The Player is fine. The Long Goodbye I really dig.
I love that one too. I actually didn't mention that one, but that is another one I am very fond of. Yeah.
Yeah, I really dig The Long Goodbye, and that's pretty much the only one.
Wow.
So, another hot take I will say is that Magnolia is a better Robert Altman movie than Robert Altman could make. There, I said it.
Oh, have you seen...
Burn.
Look, I adore Magnolia. Have you seen Nashville or Shortcuts?
I've seen Shortcuts.
Okay.
That is a movie that you definitely can notice that it is 3 hours long. I will say that. I love
that movie has one of my favorite casts of any movie ever. I mean, I will just show you. I know podcast is an auditory medium, but I will just show you that Jennifer Jason Leigh is my background on my phone from Shortcuts.
Well, hell yeah. I mean, everybody in it I really dig. I don't think it's bad. There's only I would only say Gosford Park and Dr. T and the Women. I was just absolutely not. All the rest of them, I was like,
oh, you didn't like Gosford Park? Gosford Park's great. I think that actually came out right after this.
A bunch of British people mumbling around for 2.5 hours. I'm good. I would rather watch Clue. Anyways, Images was fine. But yeah, The Long Goodbye is really fucking good. That's a fun time. Just a guy being the coolest motherfucker ever and having a cat. Hell yeah.
Well, I love The Long Goodbye too, and that would be my pick for an Altman film. And I think it's interesting that you say he's being a cool guy, because actually that's what I like about the film, is that he's really not a cool guy, and he keeps bumbling and fucking up and having all these things happen to him. But he is he's supposed to be really cool, and he is really cool in certain ways. But I love that subversion. It's just really cool, and I love how it's a satire. And of course, I love Altman's trademark overlapping dialogue. It feels so realistic. It's so great. He always gets a great cast together. He elicits great performances. And Elliot Gould's performance in The Long Goodbye is so goddamn good. It's just spectacular.
Yes.
Yeah. So I love that you mentioned The Long Goodbye, Kevin, because it's such a great film. So yeah, I've seen part of McCabe and Mrs. Miller. That was actually my first Altman film. And I thought it was okay, but I really like the ambiance and the production design. I think that's incredible. But I haven't finished it. I need to finish it. So I'm going to go with The Long Goodbye.
Yeah, I'm like the strange one, I guess, and I've seen like maybe 6 Altman movies, and my first one was, I think when I was like 13, I was like at home with my mom and my grandma and said like, hey, like, why don't we watch A Prairie Home Companion or whatever? I like rented it from my library. So started with the end. I guess it's because like it had actors who I knew they liked, like Meryl Streep and Lily Tomlin and a lot of other people, and I just felt like, oh yeah, like it won't be like, it'll be like inoffensive or whatever. I don't think I understood what that movie was working off of. I wasn't listening to Garrison Keillor's radio show. I was, and I know that was a movie. Although I was reading a lot of Roger Ebert at the time, and I know he like loved that movie. And there's like the Ebert and Roper review where Richard Roper I think says he doesn't like the movie, and Ebert is like, you have the appearance of a human, but in fact you are an android.
Yeah, I remember that. I'm embarrassed to say I've never seen Prairie Home Companion, even though I own it. It's on my shelf. I remember that being a movie too. I think it came out the same year that he died, and I remember it getting like pretty good reviews, but then after his passing, I'm pretty sure that appeared on like a lot of top 10 films. I remember A.O. Scott was like, it might not be one of his great movies, but I'm just so sad that I will not get any more from him. And then I rewatched this movie and felt, such gratitude that it exists. So
yeah. But yeah, that's the first one I saw, and then like, I don't know, I've been slowly catching up with his work. I think the best one I've seen so far is honestly, it's Gosford Park. I really, really like that one a lot. That I also watched that with I watched that with my family last summer, and that went down like surprisingly easy because I was like expecting. I think it's because like I know the writer of that. Is it Julian Fellows? I think who went on to create Downton Abbey, and
yes.
Like that. I've never seen Downton Abbey, but that's like just like sort of hoity-toity, like British society. I'm just like I'm not interested in that. But like here, I feel like there is like a lot of interesting like class commentary and like very like cutting dialogue as everyone's just sort of like politely sniping at each other. I love that everyone just like hates Ryan Philippe in that movie and being like, "What's up with his Scottish accent?" And even when he's revealed he's an actor,
that was my main complaint. Everybody should love it's the Homer joke. It's like whenever Ryan Philippe is on screen, everybody should be saying, "I love Ryan Philippe."
Should we?
No, I think we should not.
Yes.
I love
that's what
I love too is that even when it's revealed he's like a Hollywood actor, like everyone's just like spilling coffee on him and like just being an asshole to him. Like it's so funny. Yeah, and
I love Maggie Smith in that movie too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
no, it's fine. And just like his direction in that movie is great too. I mean, like when like the big reveal is happening, it's just like I think it's mostly just like a character like sitting in a dark room, like the sound of like howling wind in the background, they're slowly zooming in on them. Is like they reveal all the details of everything that's happened in the movie. It's just like, oh my gosh, like the direction that's so strong. Yeah, that was like a very that's my favorite one I've seen so far. But I also really like The Player. Those are two that I quite liked. So yeah.
Welcome to Almost Major, a podcast where we talk about many major studios and the films they released. We are doing Dr. T and the Women from 2000 while we're still on our Artisan miniseries. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And joining us again is our special guest from the Spoilerpiece podcast. It is Megan Kearns. How are you?
Hello. I'm great. How are you?
I am furious because we're talking about this, but anyways.
I cannot wait.
Yay! Anyways, Dr. T and the Women premiered at Venice and TIFF in September 2000. It was released wide on October 13th in the U.S. 2000, a wide release of 1,400 theaters. It came in at 7th place. Top 5 movies that week. I'm pretty sure we've done this week or somewhere similar because this is like the third time we've talked about Meet the Parents being in the top 5. The top 5 is Meet the Parents, Remember the Titans, Lost Souls, hell yeah, The Ladies' Man, and The Contender.
I have not seen any of those.
You haven't seen Lost Souls?
No, wait. No, I lied. I've seen Meet the Parents once. I don't understand that the love that movie got. but
Thank
whatever.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm usually the lone, sitting on an island alone on that one. So
No, I just think that movie's lame and also unpleasant.
yeah,
Like,
very unpleasant. Yeah.
I haven't
The
seen it
Contender's
forever,
okay,
but-
by the way, though.
I love Joan Allen.
Yeah, I do
That's on my
too.
list,
Yeah, that's
so,
really the reason to
yeah.
watch it, is because it's Joan Allen.
Mhm.
I've seen Remember the Titans. That was a movie I think I first watched in school, and like it was like the
Oh,
last day
yeah.
of school, and the teacher
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
"All right, this is a very good movie. We should watch that." I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's fun."
Yeah, I've seen it no less than 10 times in school. Yeah. Over the 12 years, that was the classic. I don't feel like teaching. Watch fucking Remember the Titans. The school has 9 copies. Yeah.
I never saw it because I was
No.
too busy being a nerd and watching Big Trouble in Little China over and over again.
Oh, nice
So-
try.
That sounds way more fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lost Souls, terrible movie. Glad I own it. Top song in the U.S. this week is "Come On Over, Baby" by Christina Aguilera. But I'll be goddamned if Canada doesn't win again. Top 1 song in Canada this week is "Music" by Madonna, which fucking rips. So Canada wins 2 weeks in a row, man. Dr. T and the Women is about Dr. Sullivan Travis, aka the titular Mr. T, a man at the top of his game, a rich and successful Dallas gynecologist whose religion is women. This is from Google. I did not write this. Dr. T worships women. In his immediate family and in his office, they surround him. He is loving and giving to each and every one of them at all times. He is their savior. Okay. And sure enough, as in the story of Job, one day as a higher force decides to test his fate. Once a man in complete control of his universe, Dr. T now finds himself buffeted by chaos and confusion. This plot description reminds me like when fucking Nicholson at the beginning of Something's Gotta Give, when he's just like, women. We love them.
God.
While fucking Butterfly by Crazy Town is playing, I'm like, yes.
Wait, what?
You don't remember that? Something's
don't
Gotta Give.
remember that
As soon as Something's Gotta Give starts, fucking Butterfly by Crazy Town starts playing, and it's just like
I
2
do
minutes
not.
of women just walking around, and it looks like a fucking Sears commercial, and then yeah.
I have not seen Something's Gotta Give since it was on like HBO back in 2004, I think, and I just remember watching it with my mom and my grandmother and being deeply uncomfortable. But I'm sure that I would like it more now.
It's not my favorite Myers movie, and it's also like one of her movies, and I'm like, why is this like 2.5 hours long? But yeah, that plot description is deranged. Anyways, directed by Robert Altman. Prior to this, Nashville in '75, Shortcuts in 1993. After this, Gosford Park in 2001, and A Prairie Home Companion in 2006. Written by Anne Rapp. Prior to this, she wrote Cookie's Fortune in 1999, which is also an Altman directed movie. These are the only
It's
two.
an underrated one. I like that one.
Yeah, I was going to try to watch that before, but didn't have the time. It was either that or The Company, and then I was just like, how about I just go to bed? These are the only 2 films she has written, and she mainly works as a script supervisor. Starring...
Yeah.
Okay.
Just really quickly, I have not dug into this book too deeply, but just because for this podcast I looked up to see what the Robert Altman oral biography by Mitchell Zuckoff had to say about Dr. T and the Women, and there's quotes from Anne Rapp talking about how she feels like she had a pretty positive experience working with Robert Altman, even though he would like change a lot of stuff. Robert Benton comes in and says that it sounds like he has like a less rosy view of their relationship, saying that like the Cookie's Fortune script was like really well received, but then like almost like it seems like Altman was like retaliated against Anne Rapp by like changing all the stuff in Cookie's Fortune. It's like Benton says it was as though he couldn't stand that everyone loved the script of Cookie's Fortune. He was not going to let that happen again. But then Anne Rapp says like, I don't know. I think we had a pretty good relationship. But then she says, I felt like a good writer for the 3 years when I was with Bob. I have had nothing but doubt since, which is kind of sad to think about that.
Yeah.
Sad.
This is also an interesting little tidbit. In this book that I have, Altman on Altman, the interviewer for the Dr. T and the Women segment questions. Anne Rapp told me that you even suggested calling the film Pussy, which I did not know.
Okay.
Well, that would actually make sense as to why there's so much obsession visually and dialogue-wise about wetness.
Yes.
Oh my
There is quite a bit
my
of that.
God.
There's
what
a
is
storm.
There's a storm, all right.
And a water fountain that plays a big role. Anyways.
And sprinklers.
Yeah. Anything else from that book, Charlie, that's interesting?
I mean, we'll probably get into it.
Okay.
I mean, there's certain things that I don't want to I don't want to jump the gun. So
One thing really quickly is just like, because it's not getting directly into the movie, but it's when the movie played at TIFF, Robert Altman said, I just want to say one thing. If anybody in this room has a question about misogyny, I want to just point out that this film was written by a woman. That's what he said.
there's a
Go
quote
fuck
in
yourself.
here about.
Okay.
There's a quote in here about that too. Yeah.
Go
That's
fuck yourself.
the
My
most
God.
bullshit comment. Oh my God.
If that's not the most I'm not racist, I have a black friend ass
Right?
comment.
I mean,
Oh
I
my
even love. I
God.
mean, I even like MASH is a film that I think is a scathing dark comedy. But like, I mean, Altman, it, and he's one of my favorite filmmakers. But there's certainly been dicey issues with female characters and representations of women that I think is fair game. Like, and including in this movie, which we might get into. But
Oh, we will.
yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
There was another interview I saw that was like it was of the time, and it was like, yeah, Anne Rapp worked with him on Cookie's Fortune and this, and Robert Altman's next movie is going to be a British film, and she was just like, yeah, I'm good, I'm not coming along for that one. She was like, I only write about Texas, sorry. Yeah. Starring Richard Gere as Dr. T. Prior to this, Days of Heaven in 1978. Pretty Woman in 1990. After this, he has a great appearance on Simpsons in 2001 as himself, as he teaches Lisa about Buddhism. There's a great line where he's just like, no, it's fine, you can interrupt me, I was only trying to reach enlightenment. But who would have The Mothman Prophecies in 2002, hell yeah. Helen Hunt as Bree, prior to this, won the Oscar for As Good as It Gets in 1997. The same year, this is her fucking banner year. Castaway, Pay It Forward, What Women Want, and this movie.
Yeah, she had a busy year.
Yeah, she was busy.
Yeah.
And now she's nowhere for whatever reason.
She's directing.
I actually don't know. Oh,
Yeah,
she
that's
is? Oh,
right.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I remember that. After this, she was also nominated for The Sessions in 2012. But yeah, that 2000 Helen Hunt year, I mean, that's not much quality in there besides like Castaway, but that's got to be up there with like Jim Carrey's 94 and oh god, what's his name from Alfie, the remake of Alfie?
Jude Law?
Yeah, Jude Law's like 05 or 06 where he had like 7 fucking movies come out.
Yeah, Alfie, Closer,
Sky Captain,
in the World of Tomorrow.
Aviator.
Yeah, Jude Law was everywhere.
Yeah.
Lemony Snicket's
Oh, yeah,
a
he
series of
played it.
unfortunate events. Yeah.
Oh yes, the most important one. Yes.
Yeah.
Laura Dern as Peggy. Prior to this, ladies and gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains of 1982, Blue Velvet 1986, Jurassic Park 1993. After this, Novocaine from 2001. Kate Hudson as Dee Dee. Prior to this, 200 Cigarettes in 1999. The same year, she's in Almost Famous and Gossip.
Oh, Gossip.
Gossip is fucking yeah. It's a lot. Like the last 5 minutes, they're like, how do we end this? I don't know, with 3 twists. And yeah,
This is right before Almost Famous, though, right?
it's the same year.
No, I know it's the same year, but like this came out like a few months before it, right?
I don't know.
Because I remember Almost Famous was when she got like huge, deserved praise because she's
Right.
incredible. in
Oscar
this.
nominated, right? Wasn't she Oscar nominated? For
She
that?
was supposed to win that year. Marcia Gay Harden was an upset for Pollock.
Oh, Pollock, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
there are
the-
like rumors that like Kate Hudson started to get out of her seat, and then they named Marcia Gay Harden. I don't know how true those rumors are, but
Both this and both Dr. T and the Women and Almost Famous play at TIFF. That's so funny to think about that. Almost Famous comes out in September, and then Dr. T and the Women comes out in October. That is very
Damn.
oh, never mind. I stand corrected.
Wow. After this, she's in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days from 2003. I was telling Megan off mic that there's a great bit in Morgan Murphy's stand-up, her lone stand-up, where she says that How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is her favorite film of all time. She watches it like 7 times a year. And she's watching it, and she's like, you know, she has to lose Matthew McConaughey in 10 days. She does all this crazy stuff. She brings a plant over to his apartment. She starts talking in a baby voice. And I watched that movie, and I'm just like, just shit on the floor. What are you doing?
Oh my
You're like,
God.
I'm going to use a baby foot. Just shit on the floor. What are you doing? He's like,
I have actually never seen that movie.
Oh my God, you're missing out, Charlie. It's amazing.
I know. I need to see it.
It's amazing.
I've been.
and then she ends the joke with, I'm going to make a short film called How to Lose a Guy in 17 Seconds. But yeah. Everybody listen to that stand-up. It's
That
fucking
is
great.
amazing.
Trivia. Richard Gere later admitted that he didn't understand the finale until preview audiences explained it to him.
That's hilarious.
Anyways, the first major Hollywood feature movie to show a medically explicit scene of a baby being born.
Yes.
There's that.
That's the best part of this film.
I liked that.
It's
Yep.
amazing.
Yeah.
All of the dialogue in the lengthy and complicated opening track and shot was improvised. It took 5 days to shoot.
Wow.
Impressive.
Wow.
Chosen to open the 2000 Chicago International Film Festival with Richard Gere in attendance, Master of Ceremonies Bill Curtis, when introducing the film, referred to it twice as Mr. T and the Women.
Can I also? I'm just gonna throw this out there since we're talking about his name. Sullivan Travis also sounds like Sullivan's Travels.
Oh, yeah.
Is that like a weird? Is that a purposeful joke?
It has to be,
right?
It has
to
to
be.
be.
Like.
Did we also mention that this is like one of like some 20 odd movies that got the F cinema score, which is really
Yes.
funny to think about.
Yeah.
Which the entire time I was like, what did people really despise about that? Like mainstream audiences despise about this, and then we get to the ending, and then I'm like, oh, that must have infuriated everyone. So, yeah.
Yeah, it says 1 of 4 films to receive a F cinema score from audiences upon the release in 2000, along with Eye of the Beholder, Lost Souls, and Lucky Numbers. Bryden, you have 5 minutes. Say all you need to say.
Lucky Numbers, kind of interesting. Like this movie.
There's a lot of great movies that got F cinema scores. I still want to do like a sideshow about F cinema score movies, but
I
anyway,
know. I mean, we would have to watch Fear.com and The Grudge, though.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Well, I've already seen The Grudge, so I can handle it again.
It's the 2020 Grudge, the one that like
Not the
Oh, yeah.
not the SMG one.
Not the one that made me nearly piss my pants in middle school, and now I realize it's a terrible, terrible movie. Yeah.
I remember seeing that in theaters the first time when it came out, and I must have been like 12. I was like, this isn't even scary. And then I went the second time, and I was legitimately like looking at the floor, and I was just like, is this going to end anytime soon? I'm really scared. I don't know what changed.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters on a Friday night. I went with a friend who wore a vampire cape and was hissing at people like we're being
Okay,
edgy. And
so,
then we
you were
were like we got there
popular. Okay.
we got there late. We had to sit in the front row, and it was either teens screaming or like ferociously making out in the most disgusting fashion.
Charlie, I need to know every single thing about this person who was hissing at people wearing a vampire cape. This is amazing.
My friend Tara, she's incredible. I love her to death. She's unbelievable. I love her so much.
We'll talk more later about her because I need to know.
we hung out watching vampire movies all the time. Interview with the Vampire, Bram Stoker's Dracula. She's awesome.
She took the wrong lessons from those movies. She was like, that's me. That's me, Dad. That's me. Yeah.
Oh, like you were normal at 13. Come on.
Is anyone normal at 13?
Yeah.
No. Last trivia fact: Lyle Lovett's first film score. Hopefully his last.
Correction, it's Lyle Lovett and his large band. That is the
Cool.
credit.
Yeah. Okay, but how many actors in their band names is there ever a good one? Like Dog Star, fucking what is Billy Bob Thornton's band name?
Oh Jesus.
Oh, I was reading some tweet about that today. It was like the Boxmasters where he got like super pissed on that Q.
On the Q. Oh my god, it's so uncomfortable.
It's like, would you ask Tom Petty about this? Or
oh my god.
Given that you seem to be quite passionate about music, I was wondering about your.
Would you say that to Tom Petty?
Would I say that he's passionate about music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really? Would you explain why it's not a hobby?
Would I explain why it's not a hobby? Are you reacting to the fact that I said?
Yeah, I am. Since you're instructed not to talk about shit like that, yeah, I am reacting to that. Yeah.
I wasn't instructed to. I'm not really instructed. You guys are here as a band. You're performing, but
the producer was instructed.
Right,
So,
but
somewhere along the way.
Because I mentioned that you were an actor and a screenwriter.
Well, first of all, that wasn't supposed to be mentioned either. But
that's just giving context, right? I mean, I'm happy to interview you guys as a band, but for the listeners, we're giving context for who you are. That's part of your trajectory, isn't it?
Not really.
It's not. You would prefer me to only do this interview not mentioning at all, just to clarify,
that's correct, yes.
at all that you've ever done anything in terms of acting, screenwriting.
That's correct.
Is Macaulay Culkin still doing what's his band, the Pizza Underground or something? Is that still a thing?
I do not know. And then the Bacon Brothers. You have the Bacon Brothers.
Also, I interrupted you, Bryden. I'm sorry.
Oh, it was just going to be like that Q radio interview. I mean, like, people like at the time gave the interviewer props for like, you know, handling that interview with like decorum, but the guy's name is John Gameshi, and he turned out to be like a really bad piece of shit. So like,
really,
that's not fun.
But yeah, it's still like a very funny interview to just like Bob Thornton just like being like so unbelievably like thorny. I like you, but yeah.
No one understands the women of Dallas
Dr. T.
What do we got?
like Dr. Sullivan Travis.
You look absolutely fantastic. Does anyone tell you that lately?
You.
You don't understand women.
Take a picture of my butt. I would take a picture of your butt.
By nature, they are saints.
You're gonna be the best damn menopause patient you've ever had.
Every single woman I have ever met got something special about her.
The gynecologist says there's no two alike. I guess there's no two alike.
But when it comes to the women in his own life,
I got 2 daughters. One of them's getting married, and the other one's kind of jealous.
things are a little more complicated.
Bree Davis to see Dr. Travis?
We're all here to see Dr. T.
Dr. T and the women.
I'll go last. Megan, as our guest, can you please start us off?
Sure. So I really think this premise is one of the most absurd premises. It's ridiculous. I have a massive problem with the way the women are depicted in this film. It's incredibly sexist. It's incredibly offensive. Most of the women are nothing but tropes. Helen Hunt's character Bree is a little bit more fleshed out, a little bit more nuanced. I stress a little bit. I do like that there is a queer women love story in it. And also, though, but why is Dr. T so freaked out about it? But I love that Helen Hunt, is like, it's not a big deal. You're making too big of a deal about this. Let her be happy. That's great. I think the saving grace of this film is Richard Gere. I think Richard Gere gives such a fantastic, surprisingly fantastic performance. And I say that, I really like Richard Gere. I always like him. I always find him enjoyable. But this performance is kind of, I don't want to say it's different for him, but there's something about it that really anchors the film. I don't think the film, and I was going to say, I know, Kevin, you don't think the film works at all, but I don't think this film would even work remotely without him and without this performance, because it's so subtle and it's tender and it's very somber and it's very sad. I wish, though, that it wasn't the mad woman in the attic trope that kicked off his narrative arc, which is a massive problem. But I think that Richard Gere is the saving grace of this film, and I love his performance in this.
Interesting.
Right. Charlie?
Yeah, I cannot disagree with anything you've just said, Megan, but I did enjoy this. I think a part of it is I'm a sucker for the Altman ensemble dramedy. At least this one is a dramedy. I can't, definitely some of the characters are better developed than others. I agree with you that Farrah Fawcett is just kind of, she's crazy, whatever, kind of trope, which is not great. I mean, we don't really get why she has this meltdown. She just kind of has it, and then she's in the psychiatric institution for the rest of the movie. I think part of it has to do with, I like, as we mentioned before, I love how Altman balances all of these characters together, even if they're not fully fleshed out and are a bit stereotypical. I love all the actors so much that...
Oh, the actors are great.
Yeah. And, I mean, I for example, I think we definitely could have spent a little more time with Laura Dern and why she's an alcoholic.
Right?
That's never really fleshed out.
No.
At the same time, I did laugh a lot, especially in regards to subtle little moments that clearly show she's an alcoholic, but no one's really commenting on that, but it makes it clear to the viewer, there's something going on here. I even liked I mean, a while back we talked about Van Wilder, and we talked about how Tara Reid was basically asleep during that movie, and I think she's really great here as this
really
conspiracy theorist, which I thought was very funny. I also think it's funny that I enjoyed. I can't argue that the film isn't sexist, because I definitely think it kind of is, but I like that the fact is that it's about this man who believes he fully understands women and doesn't understand them at all.
No.
And I feel like the joke is kind of in on him at the end, especially with the bonkers ending. I feel like it's very critical of him in a certain way. And opposite of 24-Hour Woman, which we discussed on last week's show, when everything starts piling up and gets insane, I actually thought that it was funny, and it was in relation to how this man can't relate or respond correctly to anything, when I actually feel like every woman has a reason to feel this way.
That's a great point. That's a really great point.
I really thought it was funny how it was, the movie was almost, I felt like, and this is my interpretation, I could be wrong here, but I felt like the movie was kind of mocking him for being like, my life is in shambles, or it's like, none of this has to do with you. Like, you know, like, it really, like, is just him getting kind of, and then how it, you brought up the Helen Hunt character. I love that it all culminates, and then he goes back to the Helen Hunt character, and what we will not spoil, and Helen Hunt basically says, like, no, dude. Like,
oh, that's a great scene. That scene is great.
Yeah, so I won't deny that there are problematic elements here. It is certainly not top-tier Altman. It's very fluffy, but I can't deny, and maybe this is just a personal thing, I miss Altman movies, and I haven't watched one in a while, and to see it kind of, I haven't really seen much of his later work in the 2000s, so I found it pretty fascinating, if slight work from him. And again, I can't disagree with any of the criticisms you have, but I did enjoy it, so that's my take.
Brian?
Yeah, I thought this was kind of interesting. I do think there's like a lot of really lumpy bits. I definitely wasn't a fan of like some of the punnier jokes. I mean, I think we talked about like all this stuff like where it's just like Richard Gere and his friends on guy trips talking about like how wet women are. Like they keep going back to that like 4 or 5 times. I'm like, I get it. Can you maybe like not hammer it home? And like we also like were kind of dunking on the score. I don't know if it was here or off mic and everything, but like the Lyle Lovett music, where like every time like someone says something like, "Oh, what kind of doctor is he? He's the lucky kind," and then like literally the drums that kick in are like ba-dumps, like kind of that stuff, or like fiddle music. That it's just like, oh my gosh, like stop like punctuating it and everything. It's just like you don't need to like give like the sledgehammer approach of like the lines, but like I think there are like a lot of like really good like background jokes, like both in like dialogue and visual. Like I love that like during like the big it's like a bridal shower, like the camera like is like just panning across the room, and then like you see like the maid who's like working at Richard Gere's house is just sort of like putting away presents, and she just like turns around and like takes like a drink from like one of the drinks that like is being passed around at the party.
Yeah,
just like kind of like little gags that are just like interspersed throughout there, or like all like the little snatches of dialogue that come in like the overlapping bits of dialogue. I like there's like kind of like stuff that like will occasionally like the stuff that like it's sort of does get to the point where like you can't always hear everything that's being said clearly, but then like the stuff that does come out through really clearly is like does turn out to be something like really kind of off kilter and funny. And I do think the movie is dunking on Richard Gere for like his character thinking like he is like mansplaining like how like, oh, you know, guys, like you don't know how like women are, I know how women are.
Yeah.
And like it turns out he really doesn't, or he doesn't know how to deal with it when things are not going the way he expects. And like the, you know, like the movie, I think the movie is like clearly subversive in that regard, but I do understand maybe the idea of like how some of the characters are a little broad. It is more like the performances that are kind of filling in like the female characters. Like I mean I did like Laura Dern. I mean her character is like kind of like just like the messy comical alcoholic and everything, but like the drunk acting is like just so on point and everything, where she's like talking sort of like, yep, we're gonna take care of this, like almost like it sounds like she's about like on the verge of like throwing up, or just like really kind of tired. Like that's like I feel like that's like a particular kind of drunk that she gets really well. And Tara Reid, very funny, I think, when she's like, you know, giving orders about like, you know, we can't have the outdoor wedding. She's like got the beret on, she's like insistently like pounding on like a chair or something, like she's like giving like a, you know, an impassioned speech, you know, that like all those like performance beats. It makes me like, it's nice to see like actors who maybe have not always had the best careers. I know people kind of dunk on Tara Reid and everything. It's like oh, like there was like a director that's maybe pushing someone in the right direction and giving them like good notes and everything. There could be like a different career path that could have been there, but yeah, and I do. We talked a few weeks ago about Novocaine, where like that movie has like kind of like a weird, also set in a doctor's office a lot of the time, but like that movie like tries to like give like the sense of chaos by just like kind of like constantly moving the camera around and like having just people yell things at each other, and I feel like this movie does a much better job of sort of like orchestrating the chaos where like it will be like steadily just building, where like more and more people are filing into the room, the camera just keeps going back and forth, and like it just gets louder and louder and louder. And I feel like the dialogue does like have, like I said, I do think some of the jokes don't always land, but like there is like genuine wit to some of the exchanges here that like makes the chaos feel a little bit more thought out and also earned. And yeah, and also the ending's out of left turn, but I also feel like the movie's like kind of so daffy throughout with like all the references to like to storms and like JFK's assassination, that I was like thinking, okay, well this movie's either gonna end with like a crazy storm or someone getting assassinated. I'm like kind of prepared for whatever, and then they get to the end, it's like okay, sure. Like I just kind of like took it in stride, I guess, because I was just sort of prepared for something weird to happen like the whole way through. So yeah, I obviously I don't think this is one of Altman's best movies, but like I thought this was like at least like an interesting curio all the same, and I think there's like stuff to admire throughout. So that's
I just want to throw out that like some of what you mentioned about the Laura Dern character and how some funny lines are like in the background. I wrote down, honey, give Uncle Sully back that fetus, like to one of her daughters, the 3 daughters that she can never control, and it's just like in the background. I like little things like that I just loved. Yeah,
Laura Dern's always amazing. She's always great.
And her costumes, my God. Well, all of the costumes in this movie I actually loved. Yeah.
They're spectacular.
This movie fucking sucks so bad, dude. I fucking hate this movie. It's the most like milquetoast boring. I do not care about any of these fucking people. I do not like Richard Gere as an actor besides in Unfaithful, honestly. And that's an entire movie about him just fucking being a loser. So it's like first of all, it's like how am I supposed to, it's like he plays a certain type of guy who's like, oh man, I know women and blah blah blah, and it's like I get it, that's supposed to be satirical because he actually doesn't know anything, but it's just like I don't know, how am I really supposed to be like after 20 minutes and your wife is committed for a fake illness and then you're just like, Helen Hunt's here. Also, there's no suspense or are they, aren't they? There's just immediately it's going to happen because movie. And she's so fucking boring in this movie. They're both so boring every time they talk. And you're just like, can you just hurry up, get together so that the eventual will happen? Yeah, it was like the longest 2 hours I've had in many years. I'm going to be honest. It was so fucking boring. Like everything that was and even while I was watching it, I was like, okay, maybe it's just the Richard Gere of it all. Like, how can a scene with, like, Laura Dern, Tara Reid, and Liv Tyler, and, like, Kate Hudson, how could that be boring? So, like, when you do get scenes like that, I'm just like, I don't know. It feels like there was, like, I don't know, it's like we're dropped in the middle of a conversation that we didn't understand what was coming before, and then we're just, like, they're just talking, and I just do not fucking care about the stupid wedding. Like, I do not care. It gets somewhat interesting when you realize that, what's actually happening with the wedding and what actually is going to happen. Like, sure, that's interesting enough, but I think it's mostly just the thing that ties it down the most is like, do not fucking care about Richard Gere's character, and especially when Ellen Hunt comes in, it's like, this is the most boring romance ever. Just, ugh. And then that ending is just, go fuck yourself. But anyways, so yeah.
I guess to I guess I find that Helen Hunt, Richard Gere stuff to be kind of the most formulaic and least interesting bit of the movie, but I feel like the movie almost comments on how it's like nothing special in the end, which is what I liked. Like that she's like, I mean, you feel this way, but like, and I have fun with you, but clearly like, I mean, not to jump into the plot, but there's reasons behind why she's not gonna do a certain thing.
Yeah.
I guess I found it's so funny that you said this was so long, because even when it was like falling flat occasionally. I found it to be so breezy in a way because of all the actors. And in addition to, like, I don't care about the wedding, I like that there's a certain development we'll get into with the Liv Tyler character where she eventually, it's not just about how Richard Gere reacts. You get a scene where Liv Tyler tells another character about a certain scene that happens, and the other character's like, whatever, who cares? Like, you know, like, it's just like, which I loved. I didn't necessarily care about Dr. T necessarily, but I was interested in, like, all of these they are maybe archetypes that aren't fully fleshed out, but I found them all very interesting, and, you know, actors doing very idiosyncratic types of performances. Like, just, again, the Laura Dern character, even small things like they're taking a group photo and she falls over trying to get into it, I found to be very funny. Where it's kind of like the movie's showing you so clearly that she's an alcoholic, and then, like, everyone's kind of, like, either not acknowledging it and they know, or they're just oblivious to it. I found to be kind of sadly funny in a weird way, because it's like, maybe the movie should flesh them out all the time, but I'd also, part of what makes Altman ensemble comedies so good is that that's sometimes life, and it is not as well fleshed out as in something like Nashville or Shortcuts, because it is very farcical here, but I do admire the effort, if that makes sense.
I think it's so interesting that you're both saying that the least interesting part is the Richard Gere, Helen Hunt scenes, because I actually found those to be the most interesting. I found those so fascinating because it felt the most like real life, and especially considering that so much of this film is farcical, so much of it is just absurd chaos nonstop. That felt very realistic to me. It felt like two mature people, you know, flirting with each other, very subtly, but going on dates, kind of getting to know each other, very attracted to each other. And it felt very real and very organic. So to me, I really found those scenes very, very interesting. I also think something really interesting about this film is it's very particular in that it's commenting on high society in Texas. Like, it's a very specific section of the population, and it's one that I can't relate to, and many people can't relate to, but it is kind of interesting to see that. And I don't know if I read a review that talked about it this way, or if Altman himself talked about it this way, but he was compared to kind of an anthropologist in this, like, kind of watching this society and this segment of the population interact. And so I think kind of the notion about thinking about Laura Dern being an alcoholic in this and how people are kind of ignoring it, not that that's great, of course, because it's not. It's terrible and it's tragic. But I am kind of wondering if that's kind of playing into, in a light, breezy way, kind of like how high society glosses over things and tries to not look at things too closely. I don't know. But yeah, but I found that kind of interesting, even if it doesn't always work.
Yeah, and I think the Helen Hunt and Richard Gere relationship is necessary to, like, you know, the story, because, like, the whole thing with, like, Richard Gere is, like, he feels like he's like patting himself on the back and giving it, and sort of, like, imposing on himself, like, I need to help these women. And Helen Hunt, and, like, throughout their, like, their dynamics, he's always, like, offering to do things for her. And she's like, can you just, like, let me do my thing? Like, let me do my job. You don't need to do everything for me. Like, that gets at him. Like, he's like when she goes to, like, get the flag, like, when they're, like, on the golf course, he's, like, a little bit burned about it. He's like thinking, why are you not letting me do this? And then she's like that necessary challenge to him. And I think that's interesting. Now, I don't know how the ending factors into this, because, like, there's a whole conversation where he's, like, talking about, like, there's also a scene where he's, like, talking about, like, you know, boys, like, you know, coming out, like, during births and everything, like, and women are always, like, competing to get out, like, in births if, like, they're twins, or if, like, twin girls and everything. And, like, I'm not entirely sure how the ending, like, if the ending, like, completely undermines, like, the movie's, like, subversiveness, like, towards his, like, sort of superiority complex and everything. But I don't know, we'll maybe get into that, but there's some interesting stuff to hash out. And I think the Helen Hunt and Richard Gere things are at least an interesting sort of conflict with regards to his character arc. And
I so agree with you, Brian. Oh, I'm sorry, I got too excited.
Yeah, no, and I also, like, I think Gere's fine in this movie, but I think also, like, him, maybe if others find him flat, I would say, like, the counterpoint I would offer is, like, the fact that everyone else is, like, such a colorful personality, and he's sort of, like, the anchoring force, like, I think is, like, sort of necessary, where he's just sort of, like, they're, like, he's like a sounding board for everyone else in the movie. I think that works.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a very generous performance, frankly, for all of these other actors to bounce off of him, and for him to just be kind of like, I like. Oh, Kevin's not here. I kind of was in the same boat as Kevin for a bit, where I was like, I don't get Richard Gere, and then I actually have seen like movies like this. I think he's very good. I think, as Kevin mentioned, he's very good in Unfaithful, American Gigolo. I started to come around and be like, okay, no, I get it. Like, I see what's going on here. But yeah, I agree with you, Bryden and Megan, that I like that it is kind of called, I mean, it goes back to the title, Dr. T and the Women, and I think what makes it so interesting is, yeah, like, he's a movie star, but it does take a good amount of maturity as an actor to share a scene where, I don't know, I can't believe I'm about to bring this up, but like there are certain actors, for example, let's just say Jared Leto, who can never share a scene with anybody. And Gere is very, very generous to, like, I think the scenes with Helen Hunt work because he allows Helen Hunt to breathe all the personality she has into the relationship. And I think that's interesting, contrasting it with a character who claims to know everything about women and then allows all the women to play off of him and he can't take it anymore. Which, you know, as even though they might be stereotypical or broad caricatures of a certain type of woman who lives in Dallas, I like that, and that's the Altman of it all too, that I like, is that, you know, it's even the beginning of the movie is so Altman-esque. That opening credit sequence, it's a long take of the gynecology office where it's just people talking over each other, and this long take of, clearly there are so many people within the world out who all love Dr. T, but like, you know, the movie isn't fully about him, and it's all about how he claims to be, yeah, so generous and so pacifist and like all this stuff. But when it comes to actual things that don't really concern him, apart from his response, he's like, I can't take it anymore. Like that kind of, when everything piles up, he also has to be in a very internalized state of, I can't take this anymore, without ever overacting over the performers. But I think that does kind of fit into the film's commentary on how men perceive that they, like, he even has that quote at the beginning of like, it's you know, women are always I don't have it exactly down, but he mentions something in the very beginning of like, you know, women are always perceived as crazy, but it always takes men to get there, is basically what that implies. And like the fact that he, you know, it's I think the reason people also hated this movie is because it is a very kind of a very like all over the place satire with no hand holding as to, like, you know, Altman's kind of like, you know, I can imagine Altman like looking at the like audience reception just being like, oh, well, that's not my problem, I've been making these types of movies for years, you know, that type of thing. Which in 2000, you know, with this type of material, I can only imagine how. Yeah, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I think you're both hitting on something interesting about the commentary on masculinity in this film, because Dr. T definitely has a male savior complex. Like, he thinks that he's the only one who has the key to women. He's not going to understand them. He's going to unlock the secrets of women to his, you know, bro-y dude friends who don't understand women either, and he thinks he's going to fix everything. And I know we haven't gotten into the plot yet, but he, you know, he says that to Helen Hunt, essentially, like, he wants to help her and save her, and she's like, no. And that's the thing, is that it really is and whether it works always or not, I think we obviously have varying opinions on, but it is an interesting look at the way masculinity interacts with the world and with women specifically.
All right, let's get started on the plot. Dr. Sullivan Travis, aka Dr. T, played by Richard Gere, is a wealthy Dallas gynecologist for some of the wealthiest women in Texas, who finds his life begin to fall apart, starting when his wife Kate, played by Farrah Fawcett, suffers from Hestia complex, a rare type of infantilizing syndrome of wealthy women receding into a childlike state, and after she disrobes in a shopping mall fountain while shopping for her daughter's wedding registry at Tiffany's, is committed to a state mental hospital. When Dr. T visits Kate, she rebuffs his kisses as improper, and he sees her preteen psychic age cannot be brought back to adulthood by his affection. Dr. T's eldest daughter, Dee Dee, played by Kate Hudson, a student at Southern Methodist University and alternate for the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, is planning to go through with her approaching wedding despite the secret she is romantically involved with Marilyn, played by Liv Tyler, her former college friend in Houston, and the maid of honor. Dr. T's youngest daughter, Connie, is a conspiracy theorist and eventually reveals to her father that Dee Dee and Marilyn are lovers. When Marilyn is on the examining table for the first time, she surmises her condition is caused by the stress of being the maid of honor for her friend Dee Dee. Dr. T realizes she is Dee Dee's lover and becomes embarrassed mid-examination, asking the nurse to finish. Dr. T's loyal secretary, Carolyn, played by Shelley Long, has romantic feelings for him, which are not mutual. In a scene at the Workday Inn, she locks the office door and gives him a shoulder massage from behind the chair, secretly disrobing while emphasizing his need for a loving wife. Refreshed but unaware of her intentions, he goes to the coat closet, turns and finds she has vanished from under the desk. She says he never empties his trash baskets. Approaching the desk, he glimpses her state of undress and quickly leaves. I don't know why this plot description is all over the place. That happens like 30 minutes left.
That was
movie.
like they devoted so much time to like just that one scene, and everything else. Just,
I know, so weird.
Sailed over it.
They're really obsessed with Shelley Long.
I know. Who, God, I'm embarrassed for her in this movie because that role sucks. Meanwhile, Dr. T's alcoholic sister-in-law, Peggy, played by Laura Dern, unintentionally meddles in every situation she stumbles in. She is currently divorced and has moved into his house with her 3 young daughters. At his golf club, Helen Hunt, a golf pro, gets accidentally soaked by the automatic sprinklers, and he offers a towel and his dry golf cart, and they decide to go play around together. Accepting his offer for dinner, she says she knows a better place than his suggested restaurants. Next, they are taking grocery bags into her condo. She moves quickly and gracefully, turning on the stereo music by Lyle Lovett. Wait, what? Did Lyle Lovett write this? The grill on the balcony, putting the steak on, going upstairs and into one room, and then walking nude across the balcony to the shower. This is really strange.
And the song that plays, the lyrics are very on the nose. It's like, it's a shame because you've been good up to now. It's like, yes, I think something is going to happen. Yeah.
God. Oh, that reminds me, I didn't bring it up in 24-Hour Woman. There's literally a song that plays that's like, you can't have it all. And I was like, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. After dinner, she takes a bottle of wine upstairs, briefly hesitating. He follows her and they become lovers. That's... Who wrote this? They become lovers. Okay. She provides friendship and comfort in his difficult office and personal life. I will fight whoever wrote this. This is an alien talking right now. They become lovers because she provides friendship and comfort in his difficult time. Yeah.
Can we do that? Can we get like the robot that like reads Microsoft Word back to you with that voice?
Oh yeah, just get Microsoft Sam in here. Yeah, it would make sense. As Dee Dee's wedding begins, the skies are darkened and thunder increasing. As the procession is blown by increasing wind, Dee Dee bypasses her groom, embraces and kisses Marilyn, and the skies open up, sending all the guests for shelter. Inspired, Dr. T drives his open-top convertible to Bree's house, where he asks her to marry and run away with him. He offers to fulfill her every need, and she asks why she would want that. This is what caused Kate's syndrome, according to her psychiatrist. She says she has made other plans. Dr. T asks if she was with Harlan, one of his golfing hunting buddies. She replies, I'm not with anybody. Distraught, Dr. T drives off into the storm and into a tornado as it crosses past and is lifted into the air, tumbles in debris. The scene fades to the morning after. The camera view pans to reveal distant mountains surrounding a vast desert flatland. His nearby car is found by 3 young Spanish-speaking children. A little girl in a white dress with a veil sees the doctor's badge on the front grille of the car, exclaiming, "Doctor!" They find and lead him, still dazed, to a circle of 7 tiny houses where a woman is in labor. Galvanized by the sight, he immediately washes his hands, drops his wedding ring into the basin, takes charge and delivers the baby, holding it and rejoicing, "It's a boy." That took a lot out of me.
So I feel like there's a lot to talk. I mean, the description breezes over like a lot of like the little parts in the movie that I think are like kind of where the movie's charm comes from. Although that ending, we need to talk about that. Like, soon,
yeah, same.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the one scene that I really do like Richard Gere in that scene where he tries to win Helen Hunt back, and like he's like, I think it sticks out just because like he's so manic and everything, just like yelling and like waving his arms or like back here against the wall. It is like scary how hyped up he is and everything. And I like that she sort of like is almost bemused, like saying like, okay, like, do you want some tea? Like, come on, like, you know, maybe simmer down just a little bit. I like that she sort of diffuses him a little bit in that scene. But yeah, it's funny too, like how the wedding, it's so casual how it all just kind of like implodes and everything, where like Kate Hudson like and Liv Tyler run off and she's like, I just want to be happy, Dad, bye. And then he's like, okay, be happy. He just like sort of yells it over like the storm and everything. And
Yeah.
it kind of implodes, but like the fiddle music is just like going again as it usually does.
Oh, that fiddle music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. There's like so many good like character bits though in this movie. I mean, I love Helen Hunt's character's name is Bree, and she like keeps saying it's spelled like BREE, not like the cheese and everything. But then like when like one of the golf the country club employees like comes up to Richard Gere, says like the woman who works here, the cheese, she wants to talk to you or something. Like I just do like sort of like that off kilter dialogue where like everyone's like just like not entirely sure how to express themselves. I don't know.
I at one point too, she says like it's like breed without the D, where I was like, like you know, like oh, she need like someone needs to get laid, like that type of like you know like where I was like at first I was like that's a little cutesy, and then what's the other one where she says it's like, or Richard Gere says it's like breach without the CH, and she's like I've never heard that one before or something. It's a little cutesy. Yeah, sorry, just wanted to comment on that.
No, I mean, we could honestly just, like, the plot in this movie, it's kind of hard to discuss it in, like, a linear way, I feel like, especially because it feels like it's, like, so little, but also so much at the same time. I mean, especially how it ends up, but I feel like we could just go about and, like, name bits that stuck out to us, whether they were good or bad. I feel like we could just go around and name stuff. You know?
I mean, going back to what Megan said about how, you know, it's Texas culture, I mean, it was so long ago, like 20 years ago, but when I visited Texas to visit some family friends, we went into, you know, a museum that was basically all dedicated to the JFK assassination. Like that stuff
I've been there too.
Exists. And I found it so funny that Tara Reid is a conspiracy theorist who has all of the accurate information about the family, but like is also like this, like you know, has all of her work revolves around these conspiracy theories. And I have to admit that scene where she's on the tour guide, where she's like, and that X marks the spot where JFK's head potentially exploded, and then her phone rings and goes, excuse me for one moment, and then the rest of the tour guide just follows her while she's on a conversation. Like those types of like visual style humor where it's not even drawing attention, because like the main conflict is her talking to Kate Hudson on the phone, but the fact that like those people are just kind of behind her at all times, or the joke's not really making it known, but it asks you to be an active participant in viewing it in order to get something out of it. There's the Altman-esque like quirks that I miss in certain movies. So
yeah. And like just sort of like the chaos of this family like spilling out into the real world, and like sometimes people go along with it and others are just like, what is happening right now? Like the scene when they're shopping, the scene where like they're shopping for like the wedding dress, and like I think like there's like, I don't know if they're like looking at cakes, but like for some reason Kate Hudson like has a knife or whatever. She's like going out to look for Farrah Fawcett, and she's still holding the knife, and the storekeeper's like, hey, you have that knife or whatever, like bring it back. And this is like, oh yeah, sorry. And the way Hudson plays it off, where she's like being very like, you know, kind of like jokey about it, and like the scene ends I think with like the storekeeper just like cocking her head like, what was that family's deal? Like it's so strange.
Yeah,
like, what just happened? It's like those little beats I think are just like very funny throughout the movie.
I mean, I just want to talk about the ending, to be honest.
Oh, we can, but like
no, go ahead.
You mentioned the Shelley Long character, and I agree with you that the way that character ends up, where it's like she's been secretly in love with him the whole time, that's a tired trope. I didn't really care about where that ended, but I do love I guess this is the thing, is I love the performances where Shelley Long has to be like, for like 10 to 15 minutes, be like, there's a lot of women out here, and like, he's like, I'll take care of it, and she's like, oh, okay, like, she kind of has to play that charming like assistant where she just can't break how annoyed she is. I found very relatable as to like, because even in my line of work where I've had to like pester people above me and be like, look, I have to deal with the public right now, and they're just like 1 second, and you have to be like, all right, like, you know, I don't know. I found that all very kind of endearing in a way.
For sure. I mean, just kind of like the like the sort of unspoken rule of like politeness and everything, even like these ridiculous situations where she's always like kind of like knocking but like lingering in the door. Joker's like, hey, just checking in, like just like that moment she keeps doing. Just like there's no reason for her to do that other than like I guess like society asked her to be like just keep this like cheerful facade up. Yeah, it's
I have to say, I don't know why this scene, well, maybe because I enjoyed it, but this scene stuck out to me. Speaking of The Office, I love when Janine Turner comes out of the bathroom and she's like, I heard that because someone like called her a bitch or something. And then the old woman whose hat she kept hitting sitting next to her, she like sticks her cane out to trip her. It's so absurd and ridiculous. But
I agree. I think that scene's funny because they've clearly had a feud in the waiting room for so long, and we don't ever know really where it started, but it keeps going. I found that, and then they're like putting her on the stretcher, and the old woman's just kind of pretending that she wasn't a part of it at all. Just like, oh, I'm just an old lady with a cane. Like, don't mind me. Like, I don't know. It's that sort of chaos where it's like it's also just absurd because it's just an appointment with a gynecologist, and they are like creating total havoc. You know, there's also that one character I actually really like the scene where she's being really emotional because she's going through menopause, and Richard Gere has a nice scene where he's just like, it's just normal. It's like going through puberty. It's fine. And she kind of walks out and is like, I'm going to be the best damn menopausal patient you've ever had. Like, I thought that was funny and not mean in any way. Just kind of like charming. I don't know. I thought it was nice. You know, like,
I mean, that's the interesting thing is like there are moments where like Gere's character is like, it's like, oh, that is like kind of a nice approach to take to this character. But then like his problem is like he's like, yeah, I am a pretty nice guy. Like I'm kind of like that's probably he takes it too far.
That's the problem. And the other thing is too is I mean, yes, he's a gynecologist, but he's never going to know what it's like to be a woman. He's never going to know what it's like to have menopause. He's never going to know what it's like to give birth. He's never going to know what any of those things are like. So yes, so they are all just waiting for the gynecologist, but it's fraught with a lot. I mean, there are a lot of bodily issues happening that can be very emotional, very jarring, and so yes,
and the scene with I feel like it in most other comedies, that scene with Liv Tyler where he realizes that Liv Tyler is the woman that Kate Hudson's secretly in love with. I love that there's a scene after that. I was alluding to this before, so sorry if I made it too obvious, but that scene where she talks to Kate Hudson and was like, as soon as I mentioned my name, I felt weird, and the whole appointment felt off to me. Like he figured it out, and I just felt deeply uncomfortable. And Kate Hudson's kind of like, whatever. Like I know it sucks, but I still love you. And then Liv Tyler's also like, and I'm starting to feel like, you know, a bridesmaid, not a maid of honor. And then like I felt like, you know, we could have used a little more of that relationship, but it's also like we get it in a way that maybe it's because I love Kate Hudson and Liv Tyler as performers, but you know, I felt like that whole relationship I would have loved a little more, but I think that kind of why I like this movie and why I like every Robert Altman movie is like I could watch a whole movie about these people like and their interior lives, and yeah, I don't know, I'm curious, I guess, because it seems like Kevin, you're obviously much more negative. Megan, we're like because I think that it didn't even get like bad reviews. It got like kind of like mid, like mixed reviews. But I feel like this film, as for audiences, has a very negative reputation. I'm curious where, like, do you think? Obviously, I believe Kevin would say yes, it absolutely deserves that. But
do they have a score on Cinema Score lower than F? Is that possible?
Well, I think it has a 4.7 on IMDb, which IMDb is fucking stupid, so I don't care about that anymore. But like, it is interesting to me that it is a film that wasn't like critically reviled, but is reviled by audiences, and it is a weird thing because it is ultimately kind of a very like. It's kind of a marshmallow of a movie in a weird way. Like, I can't think of many movies that are like this kind of light and breezy that are as reviled. Like, I can understand, like, and obviously, Megan, you brought up how a lot of it is sexist, and I'm not going to argue with that at all. But do you think it deserves this hatred? Obviously, I know where Kevin stands. But please, if you have anything else to say, Kevin, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I just think it's interesting. Yeah.
So do I think it? Oh, I'm sorry. Do I think it deserves the hatred?
Both of you.
Kevin, you go. You've been quiet.
Well, there's a long way to say this and a short way to say this. They're both yes. I do love how the pull quote for Rod Ebert's review says, when you hear that Dr. T is a gynecologist played by Richard Gere, you assume he's a love machine mowing down his patients, but nothing could be further from the truth.
Do we really assume that about a gynecologist is a love machine? That's absurd.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I understand that it's nothing like offensive for like audiences to be like, oh, well, this is why it's bad or anything like that. As far as like, or just plain like, makes the audience feel stupid like other F-star or F Cinema Score movies. But I mean, it mostly comes down to that ending, because most of the movies on the F Cinema Scores are just like ones that, even if they are good movies, they have very provocative endings that make the audience be like, well, that was a waste of time type thing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Bug is just fucking bug nuts at the end, and they're just like, oh, what was the point of that type thing?
Wolf Creek, Mother, I mean, those movies do not behave.
But just like kind of abrupt endings, like in the cut, I think the last scene is just like a door slowly closing, and then it's just like cut to black. It's just like people would be like, wait, what? I mean, I like that movie, but it is just kind of like, that is a very strange note to end that movie on.
I love an abrupt ending. I love a shocking ending. Like, yes, give me the weird, give me the abrupt. But not this ending. But anyway.
And I guess that's the thing, is like, this is such an Altman ending. It's an absurd Altman ending, but it is an Altman ending. Like, he's played upon this trope before.
Yeah, I mean, Gingerbread Man, which is one of the few Altman movies I've seen that John Grisham. That movie ends with like a climax where it's like a monsoon practically, like, you know, coming upon like New Orleans. It's like the characters are like fighting on like some dock or whatever. It's like, and this movie, it's like, I guess maybe like having like seen that kind of ending, it's like, yeah, okay, this seems kind of in line with Altman. And also they talk about like the weather in Texas like throughout the whole movie. It's like they're planting the seeds clearly for like something happening with the weather at the end of the movie. So when it came out, I was like, okay, yeah, sure, this seems natural. I mean, maybe I'm just weird and like my brain's broken or whatever.
But it is also an ending where like a cataclysmic event affects some people, but not all people. I mean, you think about Shortcuts and the earthquake, which is also playing with something horrific, which I will not spoil here, or Nashville, which ends with an assassination that does horribly affect some people, and other people have weird opportunities to achieve their goal, but then they're conflicted, and then it doesn't affect other people at all. But I apologize, because Megan, I did ask you this question too, and I do want to hear your response.
Charlie, I just want to say, like, when you're talking about how it affects some people but not others, do you mean like the randomness of a tornado and how he drives into the tornado? Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make so I feel kind of conflicted because, like I said, I have a lot of problems with this film. I think the ending is ridiculous and absurd and not in a good way. Although I love the live birth. Give me a live birth. Again, we talked about this in 24-Hour Woman last week, but I love seeing bodily functions. I love seeing fluids. Yes, give it to me. Give me more of that. I love it. So, yes, I love that. But I don't love how we get from point A to point B to get to the point of that birth. Like I said, I think Richard Gere is fantastic in this. I think if we're talking from strictly an acting standpoint, this is such a great cast and they play really well off of each other. So I think if you're looking at it just from that angle, I don't think it deserves so much vitriol and hatred. But if you're looking at it kind of in its totality, yeah, I mean, for me personally, I still don't think it's that bad. I think it's fine. I think there are good elements. I think there are interesting elements, but I also think there are a lot of elements that are problematic and just do not work. So for me, it's kind of more middle of the road, more to kind of the not great end of the road, I guess, the end of the spectrum. But yeah, but I mean, I can see why people were just like, what the fuck is this? What is happening? But yeah, and especially from that ending. But yeah, but I don't know. I think there are still some good things here. So for me, I'm kind of like, it's a mixed bag.
I'd love to know how they marketed this movie. Like, what was I haven't seen the trailer for this movie. I don't know if like they maybe just made it look like, I don't know how you would like make this movie look marketable, because it is so meandering and until like that ending, which is like so abrupt. Like it is I don't know. I'll have to watch the trailer afterwards to see if like they try to like make it look like just like a typical romantic comedy or whatever. But like it's because it's not typical in that sense at all.
I'm sure they definitely played it up. That's just like, what am I gonna do? There's women everywhere.
Yeah,
that type of thing.
And I know we might have mentioned this before, but it is fascinating to me that Gosford Park came out a year later and is one of Altman's most accessible like mainstream hits too.
Yeah,
it was preceded by this, which is considered to be like the bottom of the barrel for him.
I think he was probably like in production at Gosford Park while this was happening, because if not, I feel like people would have been like, you want how much money to make it? You just made a bomb for Artisan. What are you going to do, man? I think that's true. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, in that oral history on the little slipper they have on Dr. T and the Women, I think they talk about how this is like a bit of a turning point for Altman, realizing like, oh, you can't just like let me burn money like with these movies anymore. I kind of need to be a little bit more careful and think about what audiences want.
Yeah, because it was what was it? Budget of 23 mil and it made 22 mil. I actually didn't say that. I glossed over it because I put it in different order, and so that's not good. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I was reading that while it was coming out, he was already in talks and scouting for Gosford Park and whatnot. So yeah, so there was that. But also while reading up on it and the interviews with Andrapp and Altman and whatnot, it's just like they're really trying to nail home that this is like a modern day version of Job. And I'm just like, is it really? Because Richard Gere does not seem like very tested throughout this movie. Like his life, I mean, obviously his wife gets committed, but 5 minutes later he's hitting on Helen Hunt. Like it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And like him being detested is like, oh no, there's a storm. What am I gonna do? I'm being tested all the time, man. But then he enjoys the storm and is, laughing and all the way to Helen Hunt's place and whatnot, and then makes a fool of himself. And then he's like, fuck it, I'm gonna go drive into a tornado. But
I guess is it like just taking away like everything from him at the end, where like he loses like he doesn't have a house, he doesn't have his car anymore, and it's just like him out in the desert and like just sort of like, what will this guy do like when he's like left to his like the bare essentials, or like the like just like left to his bare elements. I don't know if that's maybe like what it is in the Job sense. I mean, yeah.
Before we get to the ending, I do think that as much as I did enjoy a lot of this film, I definitely, and we touched upon this, but Farrah Fawcett definitely gets the short end of the stick here. She doesn't really have a lot to do, and every other actress, I think why I enjoyed this is even if they are trending on problematic elements, at least I can see actors having fun, like Laura Dern and Shelley Long are clearly having fun. And Farrah Fawcett's character just is crazy, in quotes I put that, because I know that's awful to say, but she's kind of like, already by the time the movie starts, she's already got psychological issues and then is basically just stuck in that one mode in a way that, like, I like that the film does deal with her ending the marriage on her own terms, but at the same time, she's not really allowed to do anything except be in one mode, and that's not fun, and that's not, anything farcical. That's the one thing where I'm like, and I don't even think it's necessarily played for laughs. I honestly don't. But it is kind of like, well, it's Farrah Fawcett. So, do you think the whole fountain scene or her things is played for laughs?
It's 100% played for laughs.
Okay. Especially because, go ahead, Megan. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I know we're all like excited about it. It's so ableist and so awful that it is played for laughs, and like the fact that she's getting naked in the fountain, the fact that later she's like, oh, my sleeves were wet and they were all long. Like, yeah, I think it is absolutely played for laughs, and it's really disturbing. And the fact that, like, there's so many ways they could have gone with having this same situation where, like, maybe his wife left him, or maybe there's some other issue, or maybe they're long distance, or I don't know, there's like, or his wife just left him, divorced him. There's so many other ways, or she's sick, who knows? But why did we have to go the mental illness route and a fake mental illness to boot and play it for laughs? Like, it's so ableist and bothered me so much. And then we don't even get anything. She doesn't have an arc. She doesn't have a personality. There's just nothing. It's all about how great he is.
Yeah, and by the time she gets to the wedding, she's still clearly not all there, mentally. She's still kind of just being kooky or whatever. Like, that didn't sit as well with me, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there's even the laugh line where like she takes off her shoes when she's at the wedding, and like her doctor says like, okay, like don't take anything off more than that. And like I'll admit, like I did chuckle at that line, but it is pretty cheap, I must say, when you think about the context of it. Yeah. I do think though that like again, the movie is like dunking on Gere and like how he doesn't exactly deal with it. I mean, there's a line where he's like on a hunting trip and like his friend. This is after I think he slept with Helen Hunt, and his friends ask like, "Oh, are you like gonna go see your wife?" He's like, "Oh no, I'm not going because I'm worried it might be like that might like cause a setback in her mental health." And I just wrote in my notes, sure, okay. Like that's.
I do appreciate that like the scenes of him hanging out with guys is just like them being dumb hunters, like shooting like
God, those fucking hunting scenes.
I mean, but Megan, you brought up in 24-Hour Woman the phallic imagery there, where it's just them like with rifles, another phallic image, and they're all talking about shit they don't understand, like
But it's so gendered in such a really essentialist way, and it's so it's just obnoxious to me. So
those certainly weren't my favorite scenes of the movie at all, and I totally understand that criticism. I think there is a part of me that is defending this movie in a way because I was kind of like I'm not saying I'm grasping at straws here, but there are like I saw little bits of Altman, and I haven't honestly watched an Altman film in a while, and I love his aesthetic, and I think part of it is a little personal bias on my end to just kind of like take what I can get from it, and for me it was enough. But I do acknowledge that every criticism that's being made is certainly valid here. So
I think the more we talk about it, the less I like this film.
Do you think this is a good time to get to the ending? I mean,
No. We can keep talking. I want her to be like at a half star in an hour. We got this.
Just keep going. It just gets worse and worse. It declines.
Men be hunting and women be shopping is what this movie taught me.
Yes.
Those hunting scenes, my God. And I was like, is that Andy Richter? Are you in this?
There is a quote I will say that in this book, Altman on Altman, the interviewer put, in spite of it being written by a woman, the film received quite a bit of criticism for its portrayal of the Dallas ladies with their perfect hair and obsession with clothes and accessories. And Altman said, I'm crazy about the film, but a lot of women journalists, because of political correctness, couldn't praise it. They'd say, wait a minute, is this a misogynistic film? Are you making fun of women? I say, go to Dallas or pick up Vogue and thumb through it and tell me I'm satirizing women when they go shopping in Dallas, for this is the truth. You'll see them there dressed to the nines. Rich women don't have anything else to do down there, and the women in the picture playing those women were those women. I had big sessions with them. 20 a day would come in, and they told me that's all they did. They tried to get their names in the paper so they get invited to more parties. It's kind of a contest, and everybody does behave that way. As far as the way we showed lesbianism in the film goes, I don't think there was anything stereotypical about that. Men and women see a different film in Dr. T, and I think women got that film the most. I found that to be an interesting passage.
Wow.
Please quit saying quotes from this book. It makes me hate the movie more.
I know, me too.
I'm just throwing it out there for conversation starters.
There's so much wrong with that. So much wrong with what
I know.
you said.
And to be fair, this book was published in, let me see. I mean, Altman died in 2006. It was published in 2005. And again, I love Altman. I'm not saying he's a feminist filmmaker or anything like that.
Well, no, he's clearly, certainly not in this film.
But
or any film, but anyway.
I guess I just find it fascinating because I don't know any other filmmaker who can make a film, flaws and all, quite like it feels like such a distinct vision, warts and all, and I guess based on my own biases, I'm able to be like, oh, I find this particular bit juicy or interesting, and maybe that's just me. I think it is a personal thing that I'm realizing as I talk about this film. Like, none of you are wrong. I just it's a certain aesthetic style that I find particularly interesting to dissect and analyze, if that makes any sense.
I just have to say, as someone who reads Vogue, that's an absurd statement that's how women are. Like, oh my God.
I do not. And I do not. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that quote I just read, but I did think it was an interesting passage.
I mean, the thing of it is that, again, as I said earlier, it is definitely showing and depicting a very specific section of society. It would have been great if there was an actual commentary, but no, there's not. Oh my God. Anyway. I'm just getting angry the more we talk about this.
Yeah, this might be putting too much on it, but why do I kind of feel like he was like, but I can do whatever I want because it's written by a woman, so you can't criticize it. It's written by a woman. It's
well, that's the Tiff quote. That's the quote he gave at Tiff.
Yeah, and for the record, I also, as someone who is defending this movie, believe that is utter bullshit as well. I'm not saying that is okay. Like films written by women can also be sexist. I'm not trying to defend that at all.
Of course.
So.
Oh yes, my goodness. I just watched what was it, Last Night in Soho, the Edgar Wright movie, and holy crap, the turn that he takes in the ending. Oh my gosh.
We could do a whole episode about why that film pissed me off. That movie puts me in Kevin's mindset.
Oh my god, that movie.
Fan of Edgar Wright, that script is doo-doo. I mean, he didn't write it, but like it's like, oh my gosh.
No,
like,
but it's a hot mess.
Yeah, like if it wasn't him directing it, which I think he's a fantastic director, it would have been even worse for me.
Yes.
Because about halfway through, I was like, "What the fuck are we even doing, dude? why you make Terrence Stamp be a part of this? Come on now."
The cinematography and the editing are great. That's
yeah.
And the production design, I can say that.
He was just so out of his element, like you have a lane, stick to it. You don't have to keep going out of it or try to go out of it. Like, I think all of your movies so far have been great, and then you're just like, I'm gonna zag, and I'll be like, you should have just zigged. Yeah.
I remember you texting me about that. You almost live texted me about that, Kevin, and I was like, yep, like everything you were.
Oh yeah, I was just like, this isn't that. I was like, this isn't that good, but I was like, what are people like really upset about it? Because I was like, oh, this is just a bad ending or whatnot. And I was like, yeah, it's not exactly good for this or this, but I was like, I know there's people that are like fucking hate this ending. And I was just like, okay, I didn't get all that, but then I read all about it. I was like, okay, I got that, but y'all said it more eloquently than I could. But yeah, no, not good. Yeah,
no, wildly problematic. But yeah, but back to. What were we talking about? Oh, Dr. T.
What's the movie?
I know, right? Like, what's the movie? Yeah, I want to talk for just a moment about how, a woman wrote this, so it can't be sexist. And first of all, like you all said, yes, of course it can, because women can reify sexism as well and perpetuate sexist tropes. But not only that, but it's not directed by a woman, it's directed by a dude, and he's still taking her script and interpreting it. So that's just it's just absurd all around. It's ridiculous. That is such a ridiculous argument.
Charlie, did you say that he took Cookie's Fortune and kind of rewrote it, or this movie?
No,
I didn't. Yeah, Bryden was
it was in the oral history. I think it was Robert Benton who said Altman didn't make any changes to Cookie's Fortune, let her just sort of have control over that. But then he just went and changed almost everything in Dr. T and the Women. And Benton views it as if Altman was pissed about the success of Cookie's Fortune and was maybe sabotaging it. But then Anne Rapp said I don't know, I think we have a pretty good working relationship and everything. So it's maybe different accounts or whatever.
So the check cleared is what happened.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna say. I mean, Robert Altman was a huge director, a big name, very acclaimed. I mean, she might not have wanted to piss him off or piss off others in Hollywood because it is so hard for women to get films made. So
yeah.
I also feel very strange now talking about this that I am agreeing with the fact that there are many sexist tropes in this movie, but my favorite parts were just watching women have fun, and I feel very conflicted.
It's dialectical.
About that.
Those two things can exist simultaneously.
Oh
yeah, exactly. Because I loved all of the performances in this movie, all of them, even if they were bad tropes. I just had so much fun watching. Maybe because this type of thing doesn't get made anymore, and I'm just getting spoiled. I don't know.
True. One of my favorite genres is just gals being chicks, so I understand. But I was not feeling it with this. Feeling it with
what?
This.
Gals being chicks?
Yeah, where it's just women hanging out, being fun, That's the type of movies that I'm just like, oh man, I need more of those, where it's just, there's almost no plot, they're just friends, and it's great. It's heartwarming, and I love it.
So you would have loved if at the end of this movie, Richard Gere drove into a tornado, and then they all started singing the penis song from Sweetest Thing?
Yes! Yes! Everything would be great if that song was in every movie, yeah. Okay, we've delayed the inevitable.
Yeah.
Let's just do it. Do I need to reread this? No, he gets into a tornado and delivers a baby. Anyways. What is everybody's takeaway from that? Because my takeaway from that is, what the fuck is this ending? What does this have to do with anything? And then when I started thinking about it more, I was just like, so even like miles away from his problems, he can still have like this massive ego about himself, even though he just didn't. Yeah.
It's also the fact that like he's been delivering so many girls, but then like he's just like rejoicing that he delivers a baby boy. I'm like thinking, is it like he's happy? Is he's happy now that he's not surrounded by women? I'm like, I was thinking,
and the women he's surrounded by can't understand him. Yeah,
I was thinking, oh my gosh, like, is this like undermining the whole movie's argument? Where like I thought it was being so subversive. I'm like trying to think like, is there like maybe another angle I'm missing? But like,
I kind of read it a separate way, because if it went from the wedding to the tornado, I would have been like, yeah, no. But like the fact that Helen Hunt justifiably is like, I can't run away with you. And he's like, but I can take care of you. And as we mentioned in the plot synopsis, she's like, why would I want to do that? Oh, you were with that guy, one of my hunter friends in New Orleans. And she's like, I'm not with anybody. You don't have autonomy over me. And the fact that he then drives into a tornado, and I guess that's kind of, I know this is going to sound weird, but it made all the more broad farcical elements kind of make sense to me, that like, okay, we're not in full reality here, that he can just drive into a tornado
and
end up in Mexico and survive, end up in Mexico that, you know, some child can read doctor on his license plate and be like, doctor, like I kind of read it as a criticism, but maybe I'm just seeing what I want to see there.
Yes.
With the it's a boy thing. I know. But again, like I found it to be kind of funny that he's like, oh, it's a boy, I don't have to deal with feminine problems. Like I found it to be kind of like critiquing him, and also how the fuck is he gonna get home? How is he gonna, you know, like it's just absurd, but it's so audacious in its boldness that I kind of was like, okay, this is wackadoo, but it's also like Altman has used weather for climactic endings before. It's not the best time. It's easily not the best thing he's ever done, but I still found it interesting, and like maybe it's just gotten to a point that I'm interested in, like, it's so clearly got Altman's DNA all over it, and it doesn't exactly work, but I find it interesting, if not necessarily successful, if that makes sense.
Oh, it's an interesting ending and an interesting film.
Yeah. I was like, well, that took a swing. I don't know how well it, you know, I don't know if it hit the ball or not, but...
Listen, I was so mesmerized watching that baby's head come out and being born that I didn't even care about the rest of the film. I'm like, I don't even know what's happening. I'm mesmerized by this birth.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Which is weird, because I think that is the entire reason the movie's rated R, pretty much. That and the nude scene in the fountain, like, that's it. And even that's like not, that's like kind of like a far away shot and whatnot. I'm just like, I was just like, why is this rated R for like the entire runtime? And then I was just like, oh.
Also, it's 2000s, and they mention queerness in some ways, so they probably saw a rating on it. In
the MPAA was just like, what? R.
Liv Tyler and Kate Hudson are sucking face. No, thank you.
Those
to the family. Like, yeah. Well, they'll take your men away. Yeah.
I just tried to remember what the MPAA classification for Twister was. Rated PG-13 for intense depiction of very bad weather. Where was that classification for Dr. T?
Oh, man.
It also almost becomes like Lynchian, because he's stuck in that tornado for a good 1 to 2 minutes at one point, where I was like, is this going to be the ending? Because I was like, I expected this. But then, and I was like, okay, so he probably just killed himself or something, and then, oh my god, he's in Mexico? Like, well, they are in Texas, I guess, but Texas is a really big fucking state, and Dallas is not anywhere near the border, as far as I'm concerned.
No. I thought that too. I was like, isn't he trying to kill himself here? Like, I was like, that's very disturbing. Yeah. Anyway. But yes, but the birth scene for me was great. But the rest of the ending was terrible. So bad.
It's like I wasn't even surprised by the ending, because I had just been like literally walking through quicksand while trying to watch a movie is what it felt like. And then I was just like, oh, that's it. Oh, cool. I also like to be flipped off when I just gave 2 hours to a movie, but yeah, that's fine. the MPAA rating reasons, that reminds me of the great one for Spawn 1997, where it's PG-13 for thematic elements involving the demonic underworld. Okay.
Involving the demonic underworld.
Oh my god.
Oh, what was the one for Alice in Wonderland? Rated PG for some peril and like a smoking caterpillar or something.
Yes.
I think that was also one of them.
Smoking will get you a PG rating.
Yeah. But especially if it's a caterpillar.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But I just want to say, Kevin, you in a group chat before I watched this movie put Strangeland is better than Dr. T and the Women, and I have to say,
yes.
No, sir.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Does this movie have System of a Down?
I wish it did.
Who's better? System of a Down, Lyle Lovett.
System of a Down, 100%.
There you go. 1,000%. That makes it better.
Okay, well, if we're basing it on scores, Jesus Christ, but oh my god.
That's all I have to go on both of these movies, honestly.
This has good performances. Strangeland has no good performances. Like, everyone is like really
did you forget that Dee Snider was nominated for I'm seeing here a Blockbuster Award? No, probably. I don't know. For a satellite award? Yeah. I would, even though Strangeland is technically a worse movie, I would much rather watch that than this.
I would watch Dr. T and the Women 5 more times than ever have to endure Strangeland ever again. One of the worst movies we've ever covered for this show.
Oh, I don't disagree. But I mean, yeah. One has chat rooms, the other doesn't.
This one has a wedding. I like weddings.
There's a wedding that gets disrupted because they're like, we're gay. Fuck all of you. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
and I kind of love that everyone's like, what's going on? Oh, wait, there's a tornado. Who cares? Everyone's happy, I guess. Like, I don't know.
But it's also very queer-phobic, because you could also argue, two queer women getting together caused an apocalyptic weather front.
It's true.
Is it though? I wouldn't go that
I think it's they're not like, there's not like a cause and effect between them. I think they're happening like simultaneously. One doesn't cause the other, because like I think you see like the burbling clouds and like you hear the thunder like even before like the wedding happens, and then like I don't think it's about. But
I would argue more that it's about Dr. T's life falling apart than the wedding, and how he interprets the gay wedding as a part of his life falling apart.
Falling apart?
But how is a gay wedding or how is a gay romance making his life fall apart? Like, you're right, but anyway.
I guess I found
his life is so easy, dude.
Maybe I'm rewriting it in my head as what I want
in
to
a
see.
mental institution. That's sad and difficult.
But he doesn't care.
Well, that is also true.
He's losing clients. I mean, like, there's like the Andy Richter's wife says, like, we are going to find a different gynecologist or whatever. It's like, but we could still hang out or whatever. And then like,
we're only here out of respect for Dee Dee.
Yeah. And then Shelley Long says, like, I actually don't want to work for you anymore. I want to be a pastry maker or whatever. Like,
I'm not gonna lie, that made me laugh so hard because it came out of nowhere. But again, it's like all these lives exist outside of Dr. T's orbit, which is kind of, at least maybe this is maybe I'm just contorting this into what I want to see and what the movie's not doing, but this is exactly why I thought that was so funny, is that he's like, oh my god, my daughter's wedding's going to shit, not viewing it as a happy celebration of the fact that, okay, we're finally ready to come out in Texas in 2000, and we're like, fuck all of you. And he's viewing it as very part of his internalized self, and then he drives into the tornado because of the Helen Hunt thing falling apart. I guess that's what my reading of it was, not so much a gay wedding causes I mean, I know Tara Reid also does say, like, we can't have it outdoors, it's gonna be awful outdoors or whatever, but I don't know.
She also outs her sister.
Yeah,
she totally.
That's super shitty of her to do.
That's super shitty.
Right?
Well, I do think it's funny though that she's like, oh, by the way, Dee Dee's a lesbian. But I do have to get back to the museum because there's a bunch of conspiracy theories about how
John
we are Oswald or John Wilkes Booth. Yeah, about how John Wilkes Booth. Yeah, and I thought that was funny. I'm sorry, I don't know, because it, like, again, equating that she knows all the facts. And then is also kind of insane with all this. Like, she's pre-internet. She's like, QAnon Reddit almost in a way.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, the sequel with Tara Reid, when we find out that she's she's QAnon, that's gonna be wild.
That sequel will have chat rooms. Yeah.
It'll have Reddit boards, chat rooms, 4chan.
System of a Down.
God, I gotta watch it. God damn it. Final thoughts. It's like 1000% Brian and Charlie. Y'all always say great things, but it's like I hear what you're saying, and then I'm just like, I bought the DVD and I put in the same movie as y'all, but I think I got like a different cut or something. I don't know. It's just like, oh, okay. I was just like, but I don't know. Like this is like the only movie that is like truly just like infuriated me that we've done, which is funny because we've done like worse movies, but they've been so bad that they've been like enjoyably bad, or like ones that I'm just fascinated in how they were made. And this one, I'm just like, it literally felt like just a waste of my time, like type of thing, where I was just like, I was not invested in anybody. I thought I would at least like get, because there's so many people that I like in it, that it would give me something. But I don't know. I'm also just not, like we said in the intro, I'm just not on Altman's wavelength more times than not. So maybe that contributes to it. But yeah. I will not be visiting this doctor's office anytime soon.
I don't think you'd be allowed, but that's...
Well, I don't know. Just let me have my Gene Shalit moment, and please. Charlie, what do you think?
I mean, I am very much an Altman. I'm fascinated by Robert Altman movies. So I think my takeaway is I got more out of this than you, Kevin, and but I acknowledge both you and Megan's criticisms. I think they're entirely valid, and Bryden, your criticisms too. Even though I know you're more positive on this, like me, I think it's a fascinating entry into a director's oeuvre of work. I think it's not like, again, I think it's not. If you are an Altman geek like me, it's worth watching. If you're not on Altman's wavelength, or it's like, I would never recommend anyone just throw this on without knowing what they're getting into. It's not, even though, and maybe that's also, we talked about this earlier, why so many people who just went into it blindly despised it. I do think it's a fascinating film, warts and all. I did find enjoyment in it. It's still lower tier in terms of the director's work. I can't deny that I found a lot of stuff fascinating in it, while also acknowledging it is very flawed. So that's where I stand.
Megan, final thoughts?
Sure. So I think Richard Gere is great in this. I think a lot of the acting is really great cast. But yeah, I think this is a wildly problematic film, incredibly ableist, the mad woman in the attic trope, which I hate, very sexist in many ways. I do love a live birth, though. That is a memorable ending. I will give it that. So yeah, for me, this is a very uneven film. But the more we talked about it, and this was such a great conversation, the more we talked about it, the more I disliked this film.
I'm also imagining, now that you brought this up, Megan, like, because it kind of seems like like if anyone were to watch the final 10 minutes, be like, wow, this is fascinating, and then you read about what happens before and you're like, wait, what?
Exactly.
You know, like
yeah, because if you just watch from when he's emerging from the tornado wreckage and delivers the baby, you're like, this is a fascinating film. I need to see the rest.
yeah.
Maybe you don't.
Yeah. Bryden, send us home.
Yeah, I think this is a very uneven movie. I think like the jokes are hit or miss. Some of them are like just like on the nose in a way that like really kind of grinds my gears, and then others I think are kind of like off kilter in a way that I find very amusing. And I think it's especially funny how like it will be like a cluster of dialogue, like of overlapping dialogue, and then like just like something like you'll hear like a snatch of dialogue and you're like, oh, that's like an interesting thing that I wasn't expecting to hear. Like that's like I enjoyed the dialogue in that regard often, and I think all the performances are very good. Some of them by actors that I would like to see pushed in like this direction more, where like they do, some actors like should maybe do more comedy. Like Kate Hudson is like very good in this, and just like a relaxed quality to like some of her scenes with Liv Tyler, where I'm like, oh, this is like just like so lovely and sweet. And I think I'm like sort of like a little bit torn about how it treats the Richard Gere character, because I think like it is like taking him to task for like his flaws a lot of the time, but then I'm also not entirely sure about how much the movie sort of sympathizes with his more problematic views, especially the ending, as we discussed. But I guess maybe part of that conflicted views is maybe why I find the movie interesting, and also, like Charlie talked about, like this movie is so like distinctly Altman's like style and vision that like it is like there is like something to appreciate there, and like it is like just someone like putting effort into the movie clearly, and like I think it pays off too, and like like the sort of organized chaos of like all the overlapping dialogue and like the panning cameras and everything. It's like people just like clamor into the frame. Yeah, I do think this is like an interesting if flawed curio, and also just like one little, I sometimes like to squeeze in trivia. The final sequence where like the camera's just like panning out from like the desert. It says there's a special credit for Ed Lachman, who shoots a lot of stuff for like Todd Haynes and Sofia Coppola. He's like credited as like the Desert Unit DP or whatever, and I just thought that was kind of cool. They had a separate credit for that, but yeah, great cinematographer. And just cool they worked on an Altman movie. That's it.
Yeah, the regular DP, you're just like, so you want me in the desert? And they're like, you can't handle the desert. I brought somebody else in. You don't know how to pan out from the desert. Yeah. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at KevBonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at JDoyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CTNash91. Once again, thank you for listening.